we're not really public speakers, but we'll attempt through interpretive dance. We had some movies to show you, but we're just going to talk about our company, aren't we, Jazz?
Tonight was to talk about some innovation, and what I thought about in terms of fuel was that to survive for 10 years we've had to be innovative along the way. So Paul and I thought back about where we came from and where we currently are and where we're going, and we thought we'd sort of share that journey a little bit. Fuel's initial seed came from a completely different company, which doesn't exist anymore, called Garner McLennan Design, which is a very well-rated design company in the 90s. They had a television project called Farscape, and that's where the owners of Fuel first met, because we were all working on that show in different capacities. The interesting thing about that show was that it had a very high volume of visual effects needed for television, and with episodic turnaround, you're turning around an episode about once every 8 days once you've ramped up. I think by the end of the series, which is 22 episodes, we delivered about 1,300 visual effects shots of a very remarkable quality.
Yeah, and what was quite considerable at the time was the fact that we were doing almost double anyone else worldwide was doing, foolhardily, because we didn't know what we were doing. So. And
there were two things about that, which was, and I don't realise at the time, but Paul pointed out earlier, is that during that production we had visitors. Peter Jackson came to visit Garner's to sort of see what we were doing, and this was pre-Lord of the Rings. And we had producer Barry Osborne come through. Barry Osborne was a producer on the Matrix films. So somewhere along the lines in that community, which we were not yet tapped into at that level, was the recognition that the way of doing effects to turn around quickly and well was sort of changing. And the way Paul, I think, as the supervisor of the show, structured that, the main difference was using desktop boxes. So you might want to explain that.
Absolutely. At the time when we started our business, when we were doing on Farscape, a lot of people were still using turnkey solutions, very, very expensive boxes. And obviously because we couldn't afford to use these very expensive boxes, we were using, off-the-shelf workstations with pretty standard software.
So an example of a turnkey solution is, say, a flame system, which back then is probably $500,000 compared to buying a PC, basically, and running software. So basically any visual effects for commercials back then was pushed through a Flame or its compatriot, Henry. So the thought of doing it this way was very, very unusual at the time.
Yeah, and we kind of managed all these sort of shows, all these elements, and the way we sort of approached the sort of methodology of pumping shots through a sort of a team hadn't even been invented at that point, and now everyone talks about pipelines in visual effects houses, and it's become a sort of a standard catchphrase for how you manage visual effects. But we pretty much invented a lot of the ways of how to manage visual effects on a large scale at that point.
Yeah, I mean, not that we sort of knew what we were doing at the time, we just had an effective way to solve a problem. Basically, one thing I thought, as more of a side note, this was in 1998, 99, and not only a few years before, I was the visual effects production manager on that show. I had worked a couple of years before at Kennedy Miller on Babe 2. Just to put that in perspective, on Babe 2 we didn't have email. So we're talking real sort of edge of changing technologies. Unfortunately, Farscape finished at Garner McLennan after about a year, and the crew sort of went their separate ways.
But we kind of liked each other.
Yeah.
Well, I liked him.
Well, what we realised is that we had actually we had a system that was a very good way to do work in a cost-effective way, but still keep the quality. So 5 of us sort of reconnected and sort of said, we should probably put this together again. Yeah,
we enjoyed the experience. So, I mean, essentially, we foolhardily started a company, not knowing how to run a company, but we knew how to make pictures. And it's been an enormous learning curve to do that, really.
So then that became Fuel. So I suppose what helped at the beginning was, of the 5 partners, Paul was an experienced visual effects supervisor who came from a design and matte painting background. Andrew Helen came from a 3D animation background. Simon Madison came from a 3D animation background. Dave Morley was from a compositing background, and I came from production. So for the 5 of us, we could actually do a job. We could take a brief, make the bits, pass it through to each other, and deliver it. So if we were, say, all animators, I think that would have fallen over. But the fact that we'd been through the pipeline before, knew how each other worked, and could, as a group, look after a job from go to woe, that sort of stood us in good stead. So literally, the way Fuel started is we were offered space out the back of an editing company, Winning Post. Editor Peter Whitmore kindly sort of was excited by the idea and said, camp out the back. Paul had you were on a Mac at that stage?
Well, that's right. We essentially did the same as what we did on the show, on a smaller scale. We brought workstations in. Still, people were using very expensive turnkey solutions, and we just got going again. And the way we invested in the company was just not pay each other for about a year, wasn't it, really? And survived that process. And we were highly ambitious. We always went for very big, difficult stuff. And we were on a plane to the US to try and beat the drum.
That was it. We had connections in the commercial industry, certainly Paul as a freelance supervisor. So we just set up our computers and cabled them together. We did a job, and then we say, maybe we can buy a switch or some extra storage, and just sort of grew like that. The production department started out of what was then a strawberry iMac, which we even tried to render on once.
You claimed it was the fastest machine in the building, but it was just giving up.
Yeah, it claimed it was the fastest machine, but just said done and then didn't render anything.
Yeah.
But basically, and then we sort of bought a server and some other seats. We moved to, with Winning Post, another thing, we ended up with 8 seats. I think we had the first OS X server as the type of company in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first RAID here as well.
And the first RAID we got from overseas. We were on a wharf down at Piedmont, so we got sort of salt damage on that sort of stuff.
We were kind of inventing the tech as we go. I mean, we essentially were visual problem solvers. So when people come to us, they come to us with this grand scheme about, we want 1,000 troops to run over this hill and everyone has to shoot each other. And we'd come up with a way of solving that, whether it was with bits of models or with sock puppetry.
And that was part of it, the ability, and that's what we sold our thing. We say we could do good pictures, but we could, if we needed to go and build a little model, shoot it in the car park, do little smoke elements. We were very practical, hands-on people that could show the results. And slowly but surely we found commercial directors that sort of at least understood the approach or understood that you could do it differently. Certainly when we started, there was a lot of are you working at Fuel? You can't get, where's their flame?
Yeah. They don't make coffee.
Yeah. But it was just about knowing that we could do it from start to go and slowly build. Yeah. And what I think over time we realised is that we needed to start developing our business decision making.
Yeah. I think that's one of our strengths as a little group, is we've never admitted to knowing everything, and whenever we've needed help, we've stuck our hands up and invited people to come in and help mentor us and take us to that next level. So where we probably would have been pushed aside growing the company from nothing to where it is now, we've been able to grow and learn and have our sort of grow our business acumen, as it were, to the size it is now. So
we probably made little leaps to remember Paul telling me a story that Richard Branson only liked companies to be around 18 to 20 people, then he broke them up into sub companies just to sort of keep them dynamic and flexible. And we were thinking, wow, 18, that's such a lot of people, maybe we cap it around there. Then we found we had 25 and we went, maybe we cap it around 30, and then we had 35. And what we found then is that when you're taking on those sorts of people, you've got employees who have career ambitions, they want to be paid regularly, funnily enough. you've got taxes and BASs and things to do. And in order to keep staff interested, you are also looking for stimulating projects that can obviously build a company profile, and that you can't necessarily sort of do at slower margins. So that's just about learning business responsibility, which we obviously asked for some outside help with and also came up to speed with ourselves. Along with that comes what we call at Fuel culture, which is where that comes a lot. And that stems from a lot the fact that we've all worked in facilities before. So particularly on the more creative side as artists, how did they respond to being treated in certain ways by their previous employers, previous clients? What sort of environment did they want to work in and have their employers working in? And that's something that we've always been on the same page with 5 owners, that culture of Fuel, which is about being collaborative, respectful, stimulating.
And balance that sort of business acumen with creativity and not crushing either side, because they have to dance nicely together.
And when you get to, I think we're about 65 people full-time now, and we've got up to like 30 contractors at the moment. But we're at that size. How do you maintain a culture that is very much part of the identity of the company, but still be able to look after all those people, the expectations that you need to have to bring in the business, pay bills? It's something we're very mindful of and talk about. We have a low turnover of staff because in general we've made mistakes on the way, but in general we've been pretty good with trying to maintain it. Occasionally you get, one of the older employees come and go, wasn't it great when we were, 20 people and we could do, a long weekend in the snow? It's like, yeah, that was great, but it's not going to happen. But they were important things to learn along the way, what people really respected about going on the journey with you. And that's one of the things that, as you grow, we try and maintain and adapt so that it still is very much a central part of the company on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And one thing that's very interesting in our company that's a little bit different to some of the other houses is the fact that all the owners still are hands-on. We're all still making art and still creating pictures. And I think a lot of the crew that come in or are still with us kind of respect the fact that they can see their boss next to them that's still slaving away as they are as well. So,
and that was a big part. I mean, very recently we moved into a new building in Newtown, which was next door to where we were. It's a grand old heritage building. It's a fantastic space. And we talked about having the owners of the company step out a little bit so they could work on the company rather than in the company, which is sort of like a buzz phrase you hear a lot. And what we found is that we stepped too far out. So where people were used to finding one of us to talk directly to a problem, they were having to go through a channel of management that they wouldn't necessarily have been used to or know. And we just sort of found that we lost touch a little bit with some of the nuances of managing the crew and the culture. And so very recently we've reorganised that and stepped that sort of back in. So that's just, I think, an example of where I call it constant vigilance. It's about continually assessing where that culture is at, how people are responding, and particularly since, you can raise, we've raised our profile slowly but surely by doing good work. We've developed a good relationship with Marvel. We're about to deliver Captain America, our 3rd film for them. But even on, working on the great films, there's only so much you can bend the crew to hit deadlines and stuff like that. You need to monitor what you can ask of them, how the overall company's going, and the least I think we can do is still be accessible as owners and sort of show that we're still working alongside them. So that was something sort of new with growing pain we've sort of been through. Yeah,
and some of the key challenges we have at the moment is obviously as budgets get tighter on movies, even though they're making more, we're looking at keener ways to make the equipment more effective and faster and sort of self-managing in a way. So the artists are freed up to do more of what they like doing, which is the art side of things, and less of the bug finding, the problem solving that we've had in the past, really. So that's our big change at the moment, really.
And a big part of that is about managing client expectations. Our initial, I suppose, hurdle when we were small and doing desktop work was that selling the fact that you didn't have a flame, this amazing suite with the dedicated receptionist at the front and the marble foyer. And, you know, you can sell that through doing good work, explaining that, you know, clients aren't paying for that. As you grow, and as we came to realise, I mean, we sort of wore it as a badge, you know, no flame, you know, aren't we cool? We sort of realised we weren't cool because there were plenty of clients who still wanted the flame and wanted that treatment and were missing out on a lot of work.
They're wearing badges saying no work.
Yeah. So, you know, we got a flame. And that is about being flexible to your market, and about being willing to embrace a broad scale of client. And you need that in Australia. You know, it's not the hugest market. There are a lot of different clients that you can work with, who are all very interesting in their own ways. You find as you grow, there are different people in your organisation that are interested in different things, so you can usually find somebody who sort of fits with something that you might have thought. You know, since then we have a second flame and then another turnkey suite. So we essentially got 3. Ironically, we're now switching back the other way and moving a bit more towards the desktop solution.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things about working in Australia, because I'm from overseas, is the fact that we've always had to get a lot of our work from overseas. We've had to always work globally to attract work, because that's the only way you survive. The actual local market isn't buoyant enough for the sort of work that we do. So we're well versed at using some of the technologies that have been invented here, like CineSync and stuff, for video conferencing. And you know, eventually we need to hop on planes, but we've always had to hit the market. And we don't consider Australia as our market. It's more of a global world market that we go for. So a lot of our projects are overseas.
Well, and the great thing certainly about what we do, visual effects, is that it's not location-based. It's digital file shipping. You need to establish a rapport with clients, obviously, so that they have confidence that they're not going to need to come down and knock on your door and kick your ass. But we do that by showing the work, getting to know people, and then you get opportunities and relationships grow from there. So having the global market as available has been really good. And so what we've been able to do is, with some of that work, is educate some of our local clients, say doing big commercials, about this is what we're doing on the film pipeline. And the reason why that is sort of relevant is because budgets and timeframes, particularly timeframes in a way, are just sort of being squeezed. The moment from, you know, we've got a big ad coming up, you know, it's got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of visual effects, but we want you to finish it in 3 weeks. That's not unusual these days, where, you know, 2 or 3 years ago that would have been unheard of. You probably would have had 8 weeks. To do that sort of stuff, you've got to break that out of the turnkey solution to have lots of different people working on it and feeding things at the same time. And when we've been under those examples, we've been able to get the director, who might have been a very traditional commercials director, and go, hey, look at these people doing this. So if you change something, we can fire it in here while you're still in the big suite and bring it back. It's working in parallel. And recently we've had some, you know, very experienced directors who we love working with, who have actually seen it firsthand and gone, now I get it. And that's been sort of a really nice part of the growth and sort of, you know, just shaping the way the technology used. So then we're sort of reassessing, okay, when we book things with these resources. You think about how you may crew differently, how you can use the suites that may not be as busy anymore in a different way. And that's sort of about, you know, that's just rolling with your business, but I suppose that's innovation and not being rusted onto your pipe or your way of doing things. And I think the very first back at Farscape is that we came from that background. To make it work, to turn things around fast and well, we were prepared to do something a bit left field that, you didn't have to sit down and model everything in 3D. If you can go and shoot a photograph or a little movie on a DV camera and drop it into a shot, whatever works to get the result, we were sort of ready to sort of embrace, really.
So yeah, it's exciting times for us. I mean, I still think we're babes in the wood. It's 11 years now, and hopefully with faster networks, and obviously more international work as it comes. Yeah,
we'll
keep going.